público estar a ser disputado pelas conservas do outro lado, mas como é forçoso irmos começando, porque ainda há outra conferência plenária e depois temos de trabalhar da parte da tarde, isto é uma ditadura neste congresso de comunicações, e cabe-me o grato prazer de ser eu a apresentar o conferencista desta manhã. E veio azulos, não sei se... Je commence en m'adressant au professeur. Les organisateurs du deuxième colloque DIATA sont très reconnaissants de votre présence, professeur Bruno Laurioux, un éminent et spécialiste de l'histoire de l'alimentation. C'est donc un grand honneur pour moi de présider cette conférence et de vous présenter. Mais bien qu'il ne soit pas nécessaire de le faire à ce public qui connaît bien vos études et que vous a déjà rencontré ici à Coimbra. C'est pourquoi, pour ne pas prendre trop de temps, je serai très bref. Mais je voudrais vous souhaiter un excellent séjour dans cette faculté et dans cette vie, et de vous dire que vous serez toujours le bienvenu. Sim. Bruno Laurioux é professor de História Medieval e História da Alimentação na Universidade de Tours e pertence ao Centre d'Études Supérieures de la Renaissance. Doutorou-se em História na Universidade de Paris, Panthéon-Sorbonne, com a thèse Livre de cuisine en Occident à la fin du Moyen-Âge. Desde 2017, é presidente do Institut Européen d'Histoire et des Cultures de l'Alimentation, em Tours, onde já tivemos a oportunidade de estar. Nessa qualidade, presidiu ao Comitê Científico da candidatura Les savoir-faire artisanaux et la culture de la baguette de pain, a património cultural e material da humanidade, listada pela Unesco, creio que desde 2023. Entre as suas muitas publicações, que de todo não podemos enumerar, destacarei apenas as obras Manger au Moyen-Âge, edição da Pluriel em 2013, Pour une histoire de la viande, da Presse Universitaire François Rabelais, de 2017, e ainda Le Modèle Culinaire Français, saído pela mesma Presse Universitaire François Rabelais, em 2021. Hoje teremos o gosto e o proveito de ouvir dissertar sobre, como está anunciado, Un roi sans divertissement, Charles VII entre quotidienne et banquet de session. Et la parole est à vous.
Merci beaucoup, Maria-Helena, pour cette présentation. Je ne sais pas si vous m'entendez. Non, vous ne m'entendez pas. Peut-être qu'il faut appuyer.
Oui.
Voilà, là c'est mieux. Bon, je vais essayer de pas trop. Voilà, alors bonjour à toutes et à tous. Hello everybody. In fact, I decided to talk in English to be understood largely, and because my English is a broken English, as you will see, I decided to associate with a PowerPoint in English too. So you can have the good version, I hope so. First of all, I'd like to say again how delighted I am to be back for the third time in Coimbra and its DIATA Colloquium. I'm delighted that Carmen Soares and all the teams has invited me to celebrate the 10th anniversary of this fun, international and multidisciplinary initiative. It's no coincidence that the Institut Européen d'Histoire et des Cultures de l'Alimentation, which I have the honor of chairing, will be holding its 10th anniversary, international convention next June, 10th. In a way, two on Coimbra sister institutions. I repeat, I said yesterday. I'd like to take this opportunity to invite you to submit, if you haven't already done so, a proposal for a paper for this 10th convention, and you have until October 31, maybe the end of this month. You have time. So, okay, it works. Around 1455, France's King Charles VII, victorious over the English at the end of the 100 Years' War and restorer of the kingdom unity, commissioned the green painter Jean Fouquet to paint a portrait of him in majesty, in which he appears in a three-quarter view, in a posture that is both intimate and solemn. It expresses the solitude of power, while his sumptuous, comfortable attire recalls the success of a king who has just recovered Normandy and Guyenne. Yet, Charles VII pales in comparison to the many princes who made feasting a mode of government in the 15th century, and especially in the 50s, starting with the Duke of Burgundy, who established himself as the great rival of the little King of Bourges, as he says. In this case, and for several decades, the mighty Philip the Good, whose territories patiently reunited, had begun to surround the Kingdom of France. The previous year, in 1454, Philip had organized an extraordinary banquet with entremets, known as the feasted banquet, a kind of model, supreme model, designed to assert his preeminence in the crusade to recover Constantinople. Throughout Europe during these 50s, there was no shortage of rulers to challenge Charles VII, from Alfonso V of Portugal, for example, here. None of the African, no?
What?
None of the African?
Yes.
Yeah. To Mehmed II, the Ottoman Sultan, who had just brought the Byzantine Empire to an end. Not to mention Henry IV of Castile, Alfonso V of Aragon, who ruled as far afield as Sardinia and Naples, and in England, Henry VI, who maintained his claim to the throne of France for a long time. And in Roma, in April 1455, the Valentian Calixtus III, the first Borgia Pope, succeeded the humanist Nicholas V. So Charles VII is only a king among other kings. If he was certainly not a man without qualities, would Charles VII be a king without diversion? In the sense that the philosopher Blaise Pascal gave to this notion in a famous passage of his thoughts, ses pensées. That is to say, a king who is left, I quote, you have the quotation in, all alone, without any gratification, that means satisfaction of the senses, without any care in the mind, without companies to think of himself, all at leisure. Then we'll see that this king, without diversion, this is the conclusion of Pascal, is a man full of miseries. This is undoubtedly true of Charles VII when it comes to the subject of today, diet. If we are to believe the chronicler Thomas Bazin, the king ate and drank moderately, which greatly served to keep him in good health. Rarely ill, he carefully observed the usual diet prescribed by doctors. This reserve contrasts, I would say immediately, with the fury of love, I would say with the sexual fury, with which the sovereign seems to have been seized in the later part of his reign. But there is no shortage of evidence of the sumptuous banquets held there, either to enhance stays in country residence or to treat ambassadors. As a symptom, the monarch generally did not attend these banquets. It was therefore outside the royal presence that a refined art of aristocratic conviviality developed. In the tradition of Charles VII's predecessors and in the context of a real competition of gastronomic soft power, as we say now, with the court of the Dukes of Burgundy. But let's begin briefly with everyday eating in a small courtyard of the Loire Valley, that means the court of Charles VII. In fact, little is known about this daily routine because chroniclers first are only interested in exceptional events such as famines or feasts. And also due to the scarcity of accounting sources, unfortunately. Unlike the Burgundian court, the day-to-day expenditures of the 5 household offices that we call les écrous have all disappeared from the French royal archives. I have no time to explain why, but there is an explanation. Among the summary accounts, those for the household give an idea of the cost of repairing kitchenware or mention exceptional acquisition of foodstuff. I have no time to read with you this extract, but if you ask the question, we will try to read it. But for the reign of Charles VII, which span 40 years, they are fairly rare. So it's a problem. The daily life of the court was supervised by a large, highly professionalized staff. This number grew steadily as Charles VII power increased, greatly reduced when he was still the little king of Bourges. The household were repopulated at the end of the reign as the number of his members increased to maybe 2,000 people. For these 2,000 people, the extraordinary, argentary accounts of 58-59 mention 26 small officers assigned to the 2 royal kitchens on the occasion of a distribution of clothes. That means clothes with the symbols, the colors of king. 14 for the cuisine de bouche, that means the kitchen specially assigned to king and his family. And 12 for the cuisine du commun, that means all the other one that eat in this court daily. This is for kitchen. So you must add panettierie, a service specialized in confection of bread. You must add échansonnerie for wine, and you must add fruiterie for fruit. The structure, and hierarchy of the culinary professions reflect a diversity of tasks, the broad outlines of which were defined several centuries ago, but which has continued to evolve as it has adapted to changing practice and test. Underneath the queue, the chef, the cook, and even the first queue, in the 50s, it could have been certain Jean Forget. A number of professionals were active, specializing in both potage, that means dishes in sauce of varying lengths, and roast, For example, the Astor, the name is in the list, and he assisted the souffleur, because you have to activate the fire. The 15th century saw the emergence of saucer and pastry-making services at the same time as sauces and pastry confections took on a growing role in medieval cuisine. Last but not least, the daily diet of Charles VII's court was supported by abundant and varied supplies provided by self-employed professional caterers. Maybe I will pass because I have no time to detail. I can ask a question about it, but Tours was a city where there are many butchers, because we are in the carnivorous part of the Middle Ages, and maybe surely supplies from grain, from cereal, from cheese, not yet the Jardin de la France, as it will be on 16th century. Not yet. Also, I pass about this aspect, the fact that there was also support from tavern keepers and innkeepers. This support was necessary. They may serve substitute meals or contribute to reception. They were able to procure the game that contribute to the decorum of big banquets, grand banquet. The map is created by archaeologists. So this is the games bones that we find in the street of Tours. But eating can be, in the Charles VII's court, an occasion to entertain, having fun while eating, country parties with friends. In spring and summer, life at court took place in the rural setting of residences far from Tours. The court of Charles VII was very much that of a wandering king. Even after the reconquest of the kingdom, he continued to visit the country residences he loved. The sites he favors form a close-up geography of pleasure. Mehun-sur-Yèvre, Bois-Siramé, near Bourges. This is the countryside, the private sphere, the summer. Les Montilles, near Tours. This is the power, the public sphere, the winter. On each of these numerous journeys, Charles VII was followed by his servants and advisors, who were sometimes also his courtiers and favorites. Of the sites most loved by Charles VII, almost nothing remains, in fact. Mehun-sur-Yèvre, a marvelous image taken from Les Très Riches du Duc de Berry, who built this wealthy residence, and now there's just a tower, a single tower. So it's difficult to imagine the splendor of Mehun-sur-Yèvre. There are even fewer architectural traces at Bois-Siramé. A few ruined walls bear witness to what was once a sumptuous residence, rebuilt by a butler of the Duke of Berry too. The ingenuity of archaeologists has succeeded in making these ruins speak for themselves by reconstructing the elevations and proposing a distribution of the various floors according to their uses, which include cooking and the conservation of food and wine in a cellar. It was in this pleasant, functional setting, surrounded by woods and close to a river, but also equipped with a garden and a fishery to ensure a supply of game and fish, that Charles VII settled in April 1455 to stay for at least the whole summer. During this period, the chateau, castle, was a place of activity. Here, the king solemnly signed letters and ordinances issued by his council. He received great princes such as the Duke of Brittany and ambassadors such as those of the Duke of Burgundy. Did any of these surprise guests take part in the feasts that were inevitably organized at Bois-sur-Amé? About this feast, we have a rich but ambiguous document which sheds light on one or more country feasts at Bois-sur-Amé in June 55. Menus integrated into a well-known cookbook, French cookbook, the Viandier, attributed at the time to Taïwan and printed for the first time around 1486. The first menu follows directly on from the receipts and a list of spices. It should be read with care. It described the feast as a chapelet. It's an important word. We will discuss it. I hope we will have time. We will discuss it after. It gives the date, June 6, and the place, Le Bois sur la Mer. It's not a beach. It has no relationship with sea. It's only Bois-sur-Amé. But no one knows in the time where the Viandier was printed, what is it exactly? It identified the organizers, the initiators of this first menu, Charles d'Anjou, Count of Maine, and Mademoiselle de Chateaubriand, wife of the king's grand maître d'hôtel. From this point on, the menu for the feast unfolds over several pages. The first course is described at length, not only in terms of its culinary contents, essentially large pies, pâté, containing large birds as herons or spoonbills, spatula, French, but also in terms of its decorative pomp. The pies and the birds they contain are gilded or silvered, topped with crenellations, resting on a cover imitating a meadow. In short, we're in the realm of what is called in the Middle Ages entremets, which were highly sought after in aristocratic meals of the time. Banners bearing the coat of arms of the two organizers of the meal, as well as of a third person, Mademoiselle de Villequier, were inserted into the plates. But these characters are not just anyone. The Comte du Maine of the prestigious Anjou family and dynasty is the queen's brother, therefore the brother-in-law of the king. As for Mademoiselle de Villequier, she is Antoinette de Mignolet, in other words, the king's favorite. the first favorite, in fact. No, the second one. Before her, there was Agnès Sorel, her cousin. The king's favorite and his mistress for several years. The menus, the other menus, display a succession of meals. The first menu is followed by a description of 4 and 5 meals, described as banquets. The name is banquets, that were offered by other people. One wonders whether this succession of 5 or 6 menus constitutes a real series or a simple collage of meals given on different dates. A number of arguments milited in favor of the first hypothesis. It means a real series. Although only the first menu gives a date and place, the coherence of the whole is quite clear. The figures cited as initiators of the meals belonged to the court of Charles VII and were quite active there in the mid-50s, most often as advisors of the king. This is the case of the Count of Foix, Lamarche, they are all here, Étampes. As for Antoinette de Magnolet, I have already said that she is the mistress of the king, and she is probably the mademoiselle, simply mademoiselle, quoted in the 5th banquet. The key to interpret this series may lie in the term chapelet. It was used to describe the series of banquets that was organized the year before at the court of Burgundy. Each time there was 2 or 3 banquets, and each time the chroniclers precise that the people responsible of this banquet receive a chapelet. That means not the chapelet in the religious sense of the term, but in fact a hat with flowers. And when the banquet is finished, he gives for the next organizer. So this is a series. I think in 1455 at Boissy-Armé, it was also a chapelet of banquet. It is very important to understand that the term banquet in the Middle Ages has not the same meaning as now. It's not just a big meal, it is a ritualized meal within a system. So it's very important. I have no time to describe the banquet of Burgundy. In addition to being part of a cycle of banquets that in a way respond to each other in a kind of competition, maybe specialists of food anthropology would speak about potlatch in a certain way. It's a kind of potlatch. The various meals, probably given in 55, have other features in common. They were more like country snacks, big snacks, than formal dinners. On the other hand, the dishes served, rich in sugar, butter, and cream, are part of what I have called the new French cuisine of the 15th century. This fatty, sweet cuisine is found often under the same headings in the first part of the recipe collection that precedes the menu, a part that owes nothing to the Viandier's early manuscript. I don't know if it's the correct picture. Yes. I don't describe the recipe, we have no time. You will see with cream, butter, etc. And sugar. In the context of meals saturated with political signs, protagonists, heraldics, banners, this competition for culinary excellence reflects the struggle between different court clans, eager to win the favor of an aging king. It also reflects the relative balance that still reigned between them in 55. The central role of kinship, with Charles d'Anjou, for example, the emergence of a new family and political clan, the Mignolet-Villequier family. Their fortune was initiated by Agnès Sorel, royal favorite, until her death in 50, and continued through Antoinette de Mignolet, Agnès' cousin. It's an affair of family, and they're also the husband of Antoinette de Mignolet. Is dead in 54. Fortunately for her or for the king, but anyway. The king doesn't seem to have been present in this continuous string of banquets, but his influence is manifested through intermediaries, his brother-in-law, the members of his councils, and last but not least, his mistress. These actors and groups were again present 2 years later at a more official banquet, this time in Tours. I have still time or not at all?
2 minutes.
2 minutes.
For the exact 30
Well,
minutes.
just 30.
I can give you more, a little more if you need.
Thank you so much. So, this banquet is possibly the idea of thinking that making the feast is a political instrument. It's not new. And the banquet is a key moment in gastronodiplomacy. At court, among peers, this is the grand banquet of December 22, 1457. We find the same people, but they are more numerous, much more numerous. They eat in a large hall at Saint-Julien-Abbé, the only building in Tours capable of hosting such an event. Here we have the representative of the great ruling families Anjou, but also Bourbon and Orléans. The Duke of Burgundy is missing. He is an enemy. But he has sent a spy in the person of his herald Toison d'Or, who is present. These were the great feudal lords who advised Charles VII and were on the whole loyal to him. Philip of Savoy and the Marquis of Saluces were added to the Count of Foix, La Marche, and Étampes, thus sketching the first outlines of France's Italian policy. Mademoiselle de Villequier is still here, of course. She is flanked by a squad of the Queen's Demoiselles de Compagnie, from whom, as chroniclers suppose claim, the king drew the objects of his late and successive passions. A new feature was the presence of senior royal officers, from the great seneschal to the chancellor, etc. They provided the service alongside other royal personages, including the official organizer, none other than Count of Foix. While created problems of precedence, more than 100 people had to be accommodated around 12 tables. The large influx of guests was justified by the political and diplomatic importance of the occasion. But what is this importance? This banquet is intended to celebrate a high-profile wedding, but a wedding that is still in the future tense, and finally will never take place. An aborted marriage, then. The diplomatic occasion is the alliance with Ladislas Lancelot of Bohemia, Hungary, with French king through his daughter Madeleine. That is to say, a mirific project for a European alliance to counterbalance Burgundian influence. An impressive Hungarian embassy, as I give you the names of the ambassadors, arrived at Tours in the beginning of December. A series of banquets was to follow, maybe a chapelet again. Only two were held. The first in Sils was hosted by the king at Château de Montil, but we have no precision about this banquet. The second was given by the Count of Foix. The third, organized by the Comte du Maine, had to be cancelled at short notice following the death of the fiancé of the groom to be in Prague a month earlier. That means they celebrated the wedding to be, not knowing that the young fiancé was dead. The news circulated very slowly in that time, or maybe it's a political way. But fortunately for historians, the proceedings and even the menu of Gaston de Foix's banquet were preserved by the zeal of his stipendiary chronicler, the scrupulousness of the kings of France chronicler, and the curiosity of the Duke of Burgundy's chronicler. Why? So I pass here. I don't give any details on this important point. The fact that the banquet was an assertion of power, the expression of a wealthy court with wise advisors and powerful connection through entremets, but they are not fixed entremets, they are moving and glowing entremets, and the very impressive ones. It's a pity that I can't describe them, but this is life. In summary, it was a total spectacle that arouses curiosity. And that's why the Duke of Burgundy sent his herald to observe the court of a king who has considerably strengthened his power and who shows it. But is this glorious king happy? This is a question I'd like to ask in conclusion. This is my conclusion. Not yet, you will see. Yes. Charles VII was absent from the great banquet of 57 and probably from the cycle of festivity begun at Bois-Siramé in 55, even if everything reminded him, of course. But how to explain this physical absence? This is a problem. As Thomas Bazin tells us, he ate and drank moderately. He was not the first king to do that. A famous precedent is that of Saint Louis, who attended the great official dinners where he ate little but honored those he had invited. But unlike these illustrious predecessors, Charles VII doesn't seem to have been sober for religious reasons, but for medical ones. This is the new. His moderation contributed greatly to keeping him in good health, and he carefully observed the usual diet prescribed by doctors. In fact, in 57, he was often ill. It was a reason why he couldn't receive immediately the ambassador and maybe to be in the big banquet. Maybe he was feared also to be poisoned, which was a problem in the political life of the time. A problem or maybe a solution. But I wonder, this is my last, I wonder if he didn't want to preserve himself for other pleasures, in fact. Let's come back to the love fury. The sovereign seems to have been seized in the later part of his reign, when he multiplied his mistresses while still married, I persist. It was around the age of 40 that he seems to have been touched by this mite demon. Bazin accuses him of having first fallen under the spell of Agnès Sorel before going on to have numerous affairs. The beautiful Agnès is traditionally identified with the Virgin child in the Melun diptych, one of Jean Fouquet's, again, masterpieces. However, X-rays have revealed a sketch of this painting underneath the same painter's portrait of Charles VII. You see the X-rays in the middle. Perhaps I'm being a little too romantic, but this is my last sentence, but I find it quite touching that beyond death, the two lovers find themselves united for eternity in the same painting. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation about King Charles VII. I can say it's a king between,
Yeah.
not for food, but it's a model. I think not to eat following the medical advice is our kings in Portugal is the same, but here are a scenario of power and very interesting. Não sei se há tempo, se há perguntas. São 25, ainda há uma plenária, são meio-dia e 25.
A próxima vez está às h30, não é?
Às h30, não é? 5 minutos para, e pedi então para fazerem as perguntas todas e depois o professor Laurioux responderia. Alguém quer começar a fazer perguntas? Porque muitas com certeza.
I would like to ask what he would love to speak to us about that special moment. He said, I cannot explain because I have no time. Please.
Which one?
When there was you wanted near the end to explain a special moment. And you
the banquet?
Yes.
Momento.
Vou
reunir mais.
Okay.
Vou reunir mais perguntas se existirem, para depois responder tudo. Mais alguma intervenção? Não, não havendo, é responde. Pode. Answer. You can answer. You can answer. No.
Yeah. This is
The point.
the point. Yes.
The point.
It's a big banquet because 7 courses, not 4 or 5, as in the 55 banquets, with more birds, big birds, like peacock, very expensive, like swans, also, in that time. Between these 7 courses, entremets that are really monumental. That means many people can be on the entremet. And some of these entremets are activated by mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
For example, you have a tiger who gives fire, who projects fire. This is a Greek tradition. The tradition of the Greek entremet moving and going. You can find the beginning at the court of France in 1378, and it was developed in the Burgundy court. And I would say, the highlight of the show was the entremet of the peacock. That means everyone can woo on the head of the peacock. In Burgundy, it was a pheasant, because this is a symbol of Asia and so on. In Tours, it was the peacock, because there was a novel in that time which was famous about the story of the peacock. And there was a fashion created by the novel which gained all the courts of this period. In Lille, where there was the pheasant banquet, the question was crusade. So everyone was, I will be in Jerusalem, I will be the best, etc. In Tours, the question is love. And there was one important member of the Hungarian embassy who was that Antoinette de Manielet is the most beautiful girl. She's the king's mistress. Is the most beautiful girl he knows, and he won't finish to battle everywhere until she recognized his courage. So it's normal. It's a marriage. So love is in the marriage. Maybe. Okay. This is.
Thank you very much.
And it's a total spectacle. It's a total spectacle with music, with dance. And the text described the dances. And this is one of the first time we describe precisely the Morisco dance in France. La danse morisque.
That's more.
And this is also the only time we describe the Béarn dances. That means the dance practiced in the Gaston of Foix territories. And all the people laugh about this real peasants dance.
Thank you very much. Temos de acabar. Peço uma salva de palmas de novo. e vai seguir, creio eu, de imediato a próxima conferência.